Hi, everybody. This is Drew Tomlin with the Association for Middle Level Education, and I am joined today by Rachael Williams. Rachael Williams is a Year 9 coordinator and the head of Leret at Ballarat Grammar School in Windaree, Australia. Did I say all that right, Rachael?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well done. Thanks, Drew.
Awesome. So she not only does all that, but clearly she's also a wonderful author of an article that you're checking out at AMLE magazine entitled Feedback for Students by Students. So just wanted to hear more about that. Thank you so much for taking the time all the way from Australia, Rachael. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. It's great to be here. Thanks, Drew.
Awesome. So the title of your article includes the term self-efficacy, which I think is a very powerful concept. So if you don't mind, define what efficacy means to you and explain why it's so critical, especially in the middle grades.
Okay. Well, I mean, efficacy and student efficacy really means that students believe that they can be successful in the classroom. But even more than that, I think it's about them being active participants in their own learning. And so they're not just turning up in classrooms and waiting for the teacher to do their thing so they can get to the end of the day and go home, but that they have some control over their own destiny. And I think a huge part of that is for them to really understand the learning goals and what they need to do to reach those goals. And so that the teacher's not the only one driving the learning. And I think that's really important, particularly for middle grade students, because they are at a time in their lives where they're seeking more independence and they need opportunities to make decisions about their own learning and to think about that learning in meaningful ways.
Absolutely. So, and to have meaning with their learning, so to learn in meaningful ways and to feel like they are empowered in that process. So, just think about like the other side of that coin. Why do you think that schools have made teachers the primary providers of feedback, even though we know, as you have already said already, why that model actually limits student efficacy and engagement? Why are teachers the primary feedback givers?
Yeah. I'm always struck by the research that says that that teachers often rate the feedback that they give to students as more effective than the students who receive the feedback. And I think that's probably wishful thinking on our part, because who wants to spend hours, marking things and writing comments and providing students with feedback that doesn't actually help them to improve or to learn? Right. But at the same time, in my experience, I think many teachers do realize that a lot of the things that they're doing aren't as effective as they could be in terms of feedback practices in the classroom. And I think it's a familiar process. Students, that familiar, great. It's a familiar process, and students expect it, and often administrators don't demand anything more than that. And I think that really it feels like you're working hard. You feel like a dedicated teacher and you're doing all this hard work. And sometimes there's just not time. It's really hard to think, well, how do I change that? And it's accepted in many schools that that's the way to do that. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, is that it's so familiar to us and it's been done for so long and people have a trouble stepping out of that.
Right, exactly. And so like you said, familiarity and that comfort that we have with the system, we stick with it even though we know that it's not as beneficial to students. Yeah, so that's an adult mind shift, more so than a student mind shift.
Yeah, and even students, though, I think too, students, it's so familiar to them that that's the process. Right. And they're rarely asked to do anything more than that, that we're just not having the conversations that perhaps we should be having about feedback. Yeah. Right.
Do you find that students are almost equally unnerved when they're asked to give feedback to each other, or? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think at least initially, when you start to make students more active participants in that feedback process, I think at the start they're thinking, hang on a minute, isn't this your job? So it takes a little while for them to understand that they can be effective in giving feedback to peers and in thinking about their own learning as well. And that's really the empowering thing, I think, that shift.
Right. That shift, right. And fortunately in the article you've given us, 4 exceptional ways to get students involved in that feedback process. So this is tough. And it's evaluative as well, so it feels wrong on that side too. But if you had to pick just one of these ways, which one of those ways would be most important to supporting students and teachers in this feedback world and to make that shift?
You know what? And I'm gonna cheat on this one, because I'm gonna say, I think that valuing students as learners and people is the most important part, and that's something that underpins all of those strategies.
Right.
So if teachers, it's about showing them how powerful they can be as learners, and I think if teachers expect students or have high expectations of students, in terms of their involvement in their own learning, then they'll rise to that. And that's about valuing who they are. And I think if teachers and students have a shared understanding of the goals and frequent opportunities to talk about those and to discuss them and to peer assess and to self-assess, then I think students will become more independent learners and have really important things to say about their own learning.
Right, right. And what you said resonates with the whole middle level education philosophy. I think about one of the first characteristics of this, we believe, is that effective middle schools have educators that value young adolescents and are prepared to teach them. So that valuing part, I didn't think you cheated at all. I thought that was a spot on answer.
Okay. So it's all full, really, but that's the thread, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It has to be. It's one of the essential fabrics that you have to, or essential streams that you have to weave into the fabric. Yeah, exactly right. So we've talked about what teachers can do. We've talked about the benefits to students. So of course, other stakeholders that we need to consider. One that's always in my mind are school administrators. What can school administrators do to support this kind of student-centered feedback? So it happens not just in one classroom or maybe two classrooms, but how can we make it happen in every classroom if it's so beneficial?
Yeah. And this is linked to what you were talking about before, where teachers get stuck in those some of those traditional feedback, processes, and this is where the principal or administrators can have a huge impact. And I feel really strongly that administrators in schools should be instructional leaders. And if they are instructional leaders, that means that they understand the research about what works best for students in terms of learning generally, but more specifically in this instance in terms of feedback. And so that if they are in classrooms and they're in schools and they are seeing feedback working well, that's the best thing that they can do is help to share that best practice and things that work and classroom feedback that's effective, and to make sure teachers have opportunities to step out of the way that we might have done things previously, and to consider new ways and try new approaches and take risks, and to talk with other teachers about what works, and to ask teachers challenging questions, about, but supportive but challenging questions about how students are learning in their classrooms, in a collaborative setting.
Absolutely. And I think what you said, right off the bat, you said they have to, be in classrooms. They're instructional leaders. So talking to teachers about best practices like this, that doesn't happen if an administrator stays in the office and just kind of has wishful thinking about what's going on in the building. So yeah, tip of the cap. That was a great answer. So clearly you're an advanced learner and an advanced writer. So you're ready for the next advanced metaphorical question. Is that right, Rachel?
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. I'm ready.
Okay. So, all right. So if feedback was a food for middle level education, what kind of food would it be and why?
Okay. Well, Drew, I haven't met too many teenagers who don't love pizza. So I'm going to go with pizza. Yeah. Yep. But I'm thinking, it's rare to meet a teenager who doesn't like pizza, and wouldn't it be so great if they found feedback as satisfying as pizza? If it generated that kind of excitement, that would be awesome. But I think also the other thing about pizza is it can be easily shared, and that's really what this is about. Is that sharing the learning, and sharing the responsibility for feedback, and for checking in with where students are in their learning progress. And the other thing is that pizza is something that I have a niece who was making pizza from when she was quite young, and it occurred to me just now that you can, it's something that kids can do for themselves from quite an early age. And it can be as complex or as simple as you want it. So yeah, we'll go with pizza.
There you go. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you know, we have to create a warm, nurturing kitchen, an educational kitchen within which they can make that pizza themselves. And it's not a personal pizza, but like you said, it's something that has to be shared. And would you also, because you also said that students can be a little bit off put by the concept of giving feedback. So is it almost like pizza with a topping that they kind of have to get kind of used to, like maybe a, you know, like, gosh, a feta cheese or like a, you know, sardine or something? They got to get used to it. That's right.
Yeah, or maybe it could be like, you know, someone usually makes them dinner, but no, now you can make your own pizza. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, empowering pizza. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Rachel, it has been a delight. Thank you so much for the wonderful article and obviously the wonderful interview. Your answers are spot on, and clearly you take feedback, student feedback, to heart, and we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking more time with us today.
Thanks, Drew. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, all the way from Australia, where you're closing out the school year, while us stateside are just, you know, right in the middle of it. So wow, it's again, it's wonderful stuff. Thank you for making a global connection with us today. So
Fantastic.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you everybody out there checking out AMLE Magazine and this interview here at AMLE, where we help you reach every student, grow professionally, and create great schools. Thanks again.